Morning he left for Seattle, I made him eggs. That detail still gets me. I stood at the stove in my old college sweatshirt, hair in a messy bun, flipping eggs over easy the way he liked them. Yolk still runny, edges just barely crisp, and I hummed to myself like everything was fine. Like I hadn't spent the previous 3 nights lying awake next to him, staring at the ceiling, running numbers in my head. He kissed me on the cheek before he picked up his fork. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "I know," I said. "I wanted to." That was the last real meal I cooked for my husband. We met when I was 24. He was charming in that easy, low-effort way that some men are, the kind of guy who could walk into any room and immediately make you feel like you were the most interesting person he'd ever talked to. We dated for 2 years, got engaged, got married. I was 27 at the wedding. My mother cried. His mother hugged me so tight I could feel her rings pressing into my shoulder blades. For the first couple of years, things were good. Not perfect. Nothing's perfect, but genuinely good. We bought a condo together in Columbus. We got a dog, a scrappy little terrier mix we named Biscotti. Biscuit for short. We had Sunday routines and grocery lists and inside jokes and all the small, ordinary things that make up a life. I was a licensed physical therapist at a sports rehab clinic. Decent salary, good benefits, work I actually cared about. My husband worked in corporate real estate, the kind of job where the title sounds vague but the money isn't. Between the two of us, we'd managed to save just under $430,000 over 5 years. Most of it from my salary, actually. I've always been a saver. He's always been a saver. He'd tell that argument more than once. So when he came home one Tuesday evening in March and told me his company was sending him to Seattle for a 6-month assignment, my first reaction was completely rational. I asked if I could come. "It's not really set up for that," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "It's a high-pressure project. I'll be working constantly. You'd be miserable." "I work remotely 2 days a week," I said. "I could transfer some of my caseload, Lauren." He said my name in that particular tone. Patient. Slightly tired. Like I was a child suggesting something impractical. "It's 6 months. It'll fly by." I let it go. I don't know why I let it go. Maybe because I didn't want to be the wife who made things difficult. Maybe because some part of me, buried so deep I hadn't dug it up yet, already knew something was wrong and wasn't ready to look at it directly. The call came from a number I didn't recognize on a Thursday afternoon in late April. I almost didn't answer. I was between patients, eating a granola bar in the break room, half reading something on my phone. I picked up mostly out of reflex. "Is this Lauren?" A woman's voice. Careful. Like she'd rehearsed this. "Yes. Who is this?" A pause. "My name is Audra. I don't think we've ever met. But I think we need to talk." She told me she worked at the same Seattle office as my husband. She told me she noticed things. Late dinners, weekend trips logged as client entertainment, a woman who was definitely not a client. She told me she felt sick about it, that she had a sister who'd been cheated on, that she couldn't stay quiet. I sat very still in that break room for about 90 seconds after she finished talking. "Can you send me what you have?" I asked. My voice was completely calm. "I don't know how." She could. She did. "I want to be clear about something. I didn't cry that night. I thought I would. I'd always assumed that if I ever found out something like this, I'd fall apart. But I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open and biscuit curled on my feet, and I went through every photo, every screenshot, every email Audra had forwarded me, and I felt something settle in my chest like cold concrete. Not grief. Not yet. Something harder than grief. I thought about the eggs I'd made him that morning. I thought about the $430,000 in our joint savings account. I thought about the fact that his name was on that account too, and that 6 months was a long time, and that I had absolutely no idea what he was doing with our money from 3,000 miles away. I called my older sister that night. She's a paralegal, has been for 12 years, and she's the most practical person I've ever known. "Don't do anything yet," she said, before I'd even finished telling her. "Don't call him. Don't post anything. Don't move any money without talking to a family law attorney first. Do you hear me?" "I hear you. I'm going to text you a name. She's good. She's fast. Call her tomorrow morning." The attorney's name was Ms. Okafor. I had a consultation with her the following Monday. Ms. Okafor. Okafor had an office in a glass building downtown with a potted fiddle leaf fig that looked like it had never missed a watering. She was somewhere in her mid-50s, wore reading glasses on a chain, and had the energy of someone who had heard every variation of every story and was not surprised by any of them. She let me talk for about 15 minutes without interrupting. Then she set down her pen. "Okay," she said. "Let's talk about what your options look like." The first thing she explained, in Ohio, marital assets are subject to equitable distribution in divorce proceedings. Equitable doesn't mean 50-50, it means fair, based on a set of factors. The fact that the majority of the savings came from my income was relevant. The documentation I had of the affair was relevant. The fact that he had been the one to leave the marital home voluntarily was relevant. "What about the joint account?" I asked. "Can I move the money?" She was measured about this. "You are legally entitled to access funds in a joint account. However, moving the entirety of shared marital funds into a separate account before filing could be characterized as dissipation of marital assets. It can complicate the proceedings. What I'd recommend is documenting everything in that account right now. Every transaction. Get your own account if you don't already have one, and we move quickly." I didn't tell her that I'd already opened a personal account 3 years ago, that I'd been quietly, automatically transferring a portion of my paycheck into it for almost 2 years. Not for any sinister reason, just because I'd read an article once about financial independence in marriage, and it had stuck with me. I had about $47,000 in that account. He didn't know it existed. I'm not saying I planned for this. I'm saying I'm a saver by nature, and that instinct, it turned out, was protecting me before I even knew I needed protection. He called every Sunday, always at 7 in the evening, always about 45 minutes, always the same arc. "How are you? Work is crazy. I miss you. How's Biscuit? Okay, I should probably sleep." The Sunday after I met with Ms. Okafor, I sat on the couch with Biscuit in my lap and talked to my husband for 43 minutes like nothing had changed. I asked about his week. I laughed at his jokes. I told him I missed him too. I don't feel guilty about that. I want to be honest. I really don't. Because I think about the fact that he had already been lying to me for, based on what Audra had found, at least 3 months. Every work dinner, every site visit, every Sunday phone call. He'd been performing the marriage to me while building something else entirely, and he was very good at it. So yes, I performed right back. During those weeks, I quietly gathered documentation. Pay stubs going back 2 years. Bank statements showing the origin of deposits. Tax returns. I made copies of everything and stored them in a folder in my sister's car, not my own. Miss returns. Okafor filed the divorce petition on a Wednesday morning in late May. By Wednesday afternoon, the process server had made contact with my husband in Seattle. He called me 40 minutes later. I didn't answer. Here is something nobody tells you about this kind of situation. The logistics consume you in a way that's almost merciful. When you're busy meeting with attorneys and organizing documents and figuring out what your actual financial picture looks like, you don't have as much space to feel devastated. The devastation is there. It's not like it disappears, but it has to wait in line. The thing I was most afraid of was the joint account. My sister kept asking me about it, and Ms. Okafor had been very careful in how she'd advised me. But what I hadn't fully told either of them was what I'd seen when I logged into our online banking in the weeks after he left. 3 transfers. $6,500 here, $8,000 there, another $5,000, all categorized vaguely, miscellaneous, transfer, one just listed as a wire with a reference number that meant nothing to me. Over those weeks, roughly $19,000 had quietly left our joint account. I brought the statements to Ms. Okafor. She looked at them for a long moment. "This is relevant," she said. "This is very relevant. Under Ohio law, using marital funds to finance an extramarital relationship is considered dissipation of marital assets. It's taken seriously. Combined with the documentation I had from Audra, the photos, the emails, we had a picture that would hold up." "What does that mean for me?" I asked. "It means the court will likely factor this into what you're awarded," she said. "It strengthens your position considerably." I thought about those $19,000. I thought about where they probably went. A weekend, somewhere. Nice dinners. Maybe gifts. My money. Our money. Our money. Money I had earned doing physical therapy on people's injured knees and shoulders for 8-hour stretches. I kept my face even. I thanked her for her time. I drove home and sat in my car in the parking garage for a little while before I went inside. My husband contested the filing at first. I expected that. his attorney sent over a response that was, from what Ms. Okafor described, fairly aggressive, arguing that the marital savings should be split equally, that my documentation was circumstantial, that he intended to return to the marital home. He wants to come back? I asked. His attorney is positioning it that way, yes. Is there anything I need to do about that? You don't have to let him back into the home, she said. Given that he voluntarily relocated, you have grounds to request exclusive occupancy during proceedings. I'll file that motion this week. The motion was granted. I changed the locks the following Saturday. My neighbor helped me, a retired contractor named Mr. Bellamy who'd lived next door for 11 years and who asked 0 questions, bless him. He just showed up with his toolbox and his thermos of coffee and got it done. The things that actually hurt, not the legal maneuvering, not the financial piece, but the real, personal hurt, tended to come at odd moments. Not when I was thinking about him directly, but sideways. I'd be folding laundry and find one of his old t-shirts and just stand there for a minute. I'd hear a song in the grocery store that we danced to at someone's wedding and have to go stand in the cereal aisle and breathe for a second. Biscuit helped. Dogs are uncomplicated in a way that humans aren't, and he seemed to understand that I needed him close. He slept pressed against my legs every night. He greeted me at the door with a kind of desperate enthusiasm that felt, honestly, like the most genuine thing in my life for a few months. My coworkers helped too, though only one of them knew what was actually going on. My closest friend at the clinic, I'd worked with her for 4 years, figured it out around week 3. Mostly because she noticed I'd stopped mentioning my husband entirely, which she said was a tell. She didn't push. She just started showing up at my desk at lunchtime with food, and occasionally with her very dry, very dark sense of humor. And it was exactly what I needed. I went to therapy. I want to say that plainly because I think there's still this idea that going to therapy means you're falling apart. And I wasn't falling apart. I was holding it together, actually, quite well. But holding it together takes work, and having a professional to do that work with made the whole thing more sustainable. My therapist was a woman named Dr. Wentworth, calm-voiced and observant. She never told me what to feel or how fast to feel it. She just asked good questions. One day she asked me, "What's the version of the story you're most afraid of telling yourself?" I thought about it for a long time. That I knew, I finally said. That some part of me knew earlier than I'm admitting, and I chose not to see it. She nodded. And if that's true, then I have to figure out what I was protecting myself from, or protecting the marriage from, and why I decided it wasn't worth protecting anymore. We sat with that for a while. The settlement took 4 months to finalize. In the end, given the evidence of dissipation, the documented transfers from our joint account, and the contribution analysis that showed I had provided roughly 73% of our marital savings, the court awarded me a larger share. I came out with just under $310,000 from the joint account, plus my own personal savings. My attorney's fees were significant but manageable. He got the rest. He also got nothing he'd been hoping for. I think because what he'd been hoping for was to come back, to explain himself, to be forgiven in the particular way men like him expect to be forgiven. The way that involves a lot of discussion and some crying and then a return to normal, with him absolved and the whole thing filed away. That did not happen. He called me once after the divorce was finalized. I don't know what he wanted to say. I let it go to voicemail. I still haven't listened to it. Maybe I will someday. I care delete haven't. Maybe I'll delete it. I haven't decided. I want to tell you what my life looks like now, because this is the part that matters. I bought a house. A small one, 2 bedrooms, older neighborhood with big trees, about 20 minutes from the clinic. It needed work. The kitchen was dated. 1 bathroom needed a full gut, but the bones were good and the price reflected the condition, and I had the money to do it right. I spent 6 months renovating it with a contractor I found through a referral from Mr. Bellamy, and I made every single design decision by myself, which was both terrifying and genuinely one of the best experiences of my life. My kitchen now has white subway tile and open shelving and a window above the sink that looks out over the backyard where Biscuit has an entire situation going on with a family of squirrels. I stand at that sink every morning with my coffee, and I feel something I'm not sure I felt at any point during my marriage. Uncomplicated. I'm not going to tell you I'm fine in some big, sweeping, everything is perfect way. That's not how life works, and I'm suspicious of stories that wrap up that neatly. I had a marriage. I believed in it. I built something I thought was real, and it turned out to be partly constructed on a foundation I didn't have full information about. That's a loss, and losses are complicated. But here's what I know. I am 31 years old. I own my home. I have a job I'm good at and that I care about. I have my sister and my therapist and my coworker who shows up with lunch, and Biscuit, who is currently asleep on the couch with his legs in the air and no apparent concerns about anything. I have my name on accounts that belong to me. I made a choice, in a very quiet and undramatic way, to look directly at the thing I've been half seeing and do something about it. Not revenge. That's not quite what it was. More like correction. A recalibration toward the truth. The eggs, I made 'em that last morning. I've thought about them more times than I can count. Whether I made them out of love or habit or some instinct to perform normalcy even as I was already, somewhere underneath, beginning to let go. I think it was all three. I think that's allowed. I think most honest things are more complicated than we want them to be, and the sooner you make peace with that, the better off you are. Biscuit just woke up, looked at me, and then went immediately back to sleep. Honestly, same. I've thought a lot about what actually protected me through all of this. And honestly, it wasn't the attorney, as good as Ms. Okafor was. It wasn't the documentation or the personal account I'd been quietly building for 2 years. Those things mattered. They mattered practically, in very real and concrete ways, but they weren't the root of it. What protected me was that I'd made small, consistent decisions over a long time to stay clear-headed about my own life. Not because I expected betrayal. Not because I was cynical about my marriage. Just because somewhere in me, I understood that being loved by someone doesn't mean handing them every piece of yourself and hoping for the best. I kept my name on my own accounts. I kept my own career. I kept my own sense of what was true, even when it was uncomfortable. And when the moment came, when Audra called me and the whole picture shifted, I didn't have to build myself from scratch. I was already standing. That's the thing about integrity, and I mean that word in the structural sense. The way an engineer means it, something has integrity when it holds its shape under pressure. My husband made choices, repeatedly, over months, that slowly hollowed out the foundation of what we'd built. Every lie, every transfer, every Sunday phone call where he performed a marriage he'd already privately abandoned. Those weren't just betrayals of me. They were choices he made about what kind of person he was going to be. And choices accumulate. They compound. Eventually, they become the whole architecture of a life, and you end up living inside whatever you built. I'm not angry at him in the way I thought I would be. That surprised me. What I feel is something closer to clarity. He made his choices, and those choices had consequences he didn't anticipate, because people who operate in that kind of hidden, compartmentalized way tend to underestimate the people they've underestimated. They count on you not looking too closely. They count on love making you a little bit slow. I looked closely. And then I moved carefully. And then I moved on. There's something I want to say to anyone who's sitting right now with that particular feeling, the one where you half know something is wrong but you're not quite ready to pick it up and look at the underside. I understand that feeling. I lived in it for longer than I like to admit. And I'm not here to tell you what to do with it, because you're the only one who can make that call. But I will say this, intelligence without the courage to act on what you know is just a very elaborate way of staying stuck. The hardest thing I did in this entire process wasn't meeting with an attorney or gathering documents or changing the locks. The hardest thing was deciding that I was worth the disruption, that my life was worth the mess and the difficulty and the months of uncertainty that came with choosing truth over comfort. Lauren made it through. I made it through. Not because anything was easy, but because at some point I decided that easy wasn't actually what I was after. Biscuit is still asleep on the couch. The coffee is still warm. The house is still mine. That's enough. That's actually more than enough.